Good morning, everyone. Good to see you this morning. Uh, we have Pastor Jeff, with us today, and we're going to have an interesting time. This show, and probably at least one or two more after today, and we'll see how today goes, but are based on a sermon that Rick Warren gave a few weeks ago. And the title of that was Being a Disciple in the Digital Age. And that sounds like a title. Well, am I in the digital age? Well, we are, aren't we?
Whether we like it or not.
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And the fact is, he had some really interesting things to say, and put in another way, what Pastor Rick was saying is use your smartphone for the glory of the Lord.
Absolutely.
Now, you out there that are watching this morning, I'm pretty confident to say that you have a phone. Now, if it's a smartphone, which almost all of them are, then there's a lot of things that you can do with it. And do you remember, Jeff, what Rick said about the power that these are computers?
Yeah.
These are computers. Do you remember his analogy or what his story went with it?
I'm trying to remember specifically. I know that
It was
there's
about
a number
NASA.
of stories. Oh, yeah. As far as launching the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, these things are so much more powerful. I mean, I think what we had basically back then was the function of a basic calculator compared to these are like supercomputers.
Yeah. That there's more power, computing power, a lot more in your pocket than there was in what sent the man to the moon.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know we say it, and I've heard it from many different sources. Yeah. It's actually hard for us to believe.
I mean, back then,
I don't get it.
Back then, most technology they were just basically large math computers. They did math, and these things do so much more than that. Yeah.
A couple other things he said that I found interesting is that in 2007, Time magazine declared the smartphone the invention of the year. And later, many have proposed that it's the invention of history of the world. Because, and that's what Rick was saying, that the wheel does one thing, and that was big, but the smartphone does thousands of things if we know how to use it. And it really has changed our lives.
It's changed it. We used to have to, carry around, have encyclopedias in our house and go to the library and
I
look up
remember
things
mine.
and books. Yes.
We had big purchase. We bought encyclopedias.
Yeah, absolutely. And you couldn't have them in your pocket, so you had to go, it's like, I need to look that up. And
Not hardly.
Yeah, no, exactly. Maybe in your trunk, but that'd be kind of weird.
No. That's funny. That's funny. Well, folks out there, I don't know if we in this generation stay up to the same averages that all of America does, but they've done surveys among the people, and we look at our phone every 12 minutes or 80 times a day. That's amazing to me, but I probably do.
Yeah,
I probably
especially with kind of the younger generations. I mean, they know nothing but having a smartphone.
That's true.
And so, I mean, there's a whole other discussion we could have, which we're not doing today, is about maybe some of the downsides of that. But we're talking about the plus sides of having the smartphone.
And so I think Pastor Rick was right on when he spent the day doing it. So how can we best use our phone? Now, I got to tell you, and I'm telling you out in especially those who watch from Laguna Woods, which is most of us. But anyway, when we started this church 11 years ago now, very few of us had even email. About half did. Actually, less than half did. And now, in 10 years, we all virtually have email. But we're going to talk a little bit about that, too, because it's something that we really need to have in this day and age.
Yeah, there's some basic things when using your phone. I mean, we're going to talk about some other subjects, too, as far as different apps. But there's some basic things like email and texting that are very beneficial.
So, folks, if you don't already, grab your phone, and we're going to walk you through a few easy steps, okay? So, You got your phone,
I'm
Jeff?
ready. I
Okay.
am ready.
So let's first of all turn it on.
And we should mention that we're
Oh,
using two different types of phones.
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, there are different major types, but the two different types, probably the most popular is the Apple iPhone. And the Apple iPhone, I actually recommend quite a bit because it's a very easy to use
That's why
device.
we have it.
Yes.
I have it. And
Yeah.
my wife and I were struggling along with the Android system. We got
Right.
iPhones, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We,
Yeah.
by
But
the
just
way,
even mention it though.
yeah.
But there's also the Android, which I use. But I come from a more technical background. But again, they're both very similar, just different flavors. Yeah.
So I forgot to give us our verse for the day.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if I don't do that, I get in big trouble. Anyway, no, I don't. I wanted to read it to you because if we were doing this and we're talking about a phone and we didn't have a verse that backs up the importance of that, then we would just be making it up. In Psalm chapter 25 at verse 5, God, David is speaking and he says, "Guide me in your truth, Lord, and teach me, for you are God my Savior, and my hope is in you all day long." And that's the part of this verse that I wanted to make sure that we all get.
Yeah.
That our hope is to be in God all day long, not to forget Him. Now, if we're picking up our phone every 12 minutes, there's no better thing that we could do than to remind us that God. So, folks, I hope we start to think of our phone, the smartphone, as an instrument to know God better.
Yes. Yes, and love others.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah. Well, that's the point. We're actually going to go through a lot of the purposes and how we can use our phone for those purposes. And in light of that, you actually wanted to just start with probably the purpose of fellowship and keeping in touch with people.
Yeah, because the primary thing, I mean, as Rick said earlier, people use the phone so much these days, and every 12 minutes, or I can't remember how many hours a day that a lot of people use their phone, and a lot of times people use them instead of personal connection. But the hope is that we use our phones to increase or to improve our personal connection. Because I use my phone quite a bit to set up meetings and coffee meetings and lunches and getting together, as opposed to just a lot of people, and we're going off on a different thing, but I'd hate to say that some people might use this to replace personal connection, but the hope is that this helps us create better personal connections and we actually meet with people.
So the basic way of doing that, the most basic, is through email.
Yes.
And so tomorrow, and already our time is going quickly, tomorrow I want to talk about two of the other very, very basic things that every one of us should have and be doing. So I want you to tune in back tomorrow. But email, Jeff, how can we make sure, because is that too complicated for some of us? How do we do email on our phone?
Well, the beautiful thing is there's apps, and you mentioned apps before, but there are apps that are basically made for phones, and it makes doing things like email and other things like Facebook we'll talk about very simple and very easy to do, and they're built into basically every smartphone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android. And are we going to do the thing with screenshots this show, or you want to do that next show?
Well,
okay. How much time? Yeah.
No. The fact is, on my phone, at the very bottom, there is a little thing that looks like a envelope.
Right.
And if you touch that, that takes me right into the email.
Yeah, that's the universal.
Do you have that also?
Yes,
on an
and it's also an envelope.
So that means everyone, you have it too on your phone.
Yeah.
Touch that, see if you're set up for email, and we'll pick that up again tomorrow. But we're going to talk about some other really useful things for you. So tune back in tomorrow. See you then.